This is Open Door with Vince Robinson. In-depth conversations with people who are making a difference in the lives of others here and around the world. Culture is at the heart of who you are. Know your culture, find yourself on Open Door with Vince Robinson.
Grand dawning Cleveland, Ohio, and the rest of planet Earth. Welcome to another edition of Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest today is an educator, artist, actress, writer, entrepreneur, mother, and a proud grandmother, and she's interested in all things creative and authentic. In the interest of transparency, I will let you know that I have known my guest for well over 4 decades, but recently we reconnected, and I'm happy to have this conversation with her. Welcome to Open Door, Ms. Lori Ingram. Lori, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to have you today. And today we're going to talk about your life. So I see you're wearing a number of roles: educator, artist, actress, writer, entrepreneur, mother, and grandmother. And I also understand that you spent a considerable amount of your life here in the Cleveland area, Northeast Ohio. And I also know you're a former student at Kent State University. So where would you like to start?
Well, I think I'd like to start with being born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay. So
I was born here.
Mm-hmm. You were born in Cleveland, and then you were in different neighborhoods and different schools. If you'd like to share those with us, you can.
Sure. I was born in Cleveland. I was living in the Lee Harbor area, which is actually, I live in the Lee Harbor area presently as well. And eventually, when I was in 5th grade, my parents moved to Shaker. So I was transferred to the Shaker schools. And it was kind of difficult transferring because I don't know if most people are aware, but Cleveland school system used to have an enrichment program, and they had enrichment, which meant that you got different type of teaching for more advanced teaching in your grade that you're at, and then they had major work, and then they had special major work. And I was in special major work. In my 5th grade class, there were only 9 students. But there was a lot of pressure on academics and getting it right, and it was very stressful to be in special major work. So I was, a really great student, and when they moved me to the Shaker system, at that time, it was just before they were segregating all the schools by busing. And so when I moved to Shaker, they thought, since I was from the Cleveland school system, that I probably didn't know too much about anything. So they backtracked me and put me behind instead of forward. And that caused me to have some difficulties in learning because I was able to do complex problems in math in Cleveland and was, relegated to arithmetic in Shaker. Or I was able to read Julius Caesar by Shakespeare in Cleveland, and I was reading Pippi Longstockings in Shaker because they would not let me read books that were more difficult. So it really created a schism, I think, in my learning, but it has helped me. I'm a tutor now, and it has helped me tutor students to go to the level that they are really capable of doing. It taught me a lesson, as a very good lesson of how not to do something.
It's interesting when you say that, in essence, you were in advanced placement classes. You were a step beyond just the regular schmegula student. And
yes.
you get to Shaker Heights, they should have some type of documentation of where you were academically. I'm just wondering why they would choose to set you back as opposed to advancing you forward. And then the other thing is, that was a lot of pressure to be feeling as a fifth grader.
Well, I think it has to do with racial profiling, really. At that time, they had not really segregated the schools through the busing in Shaker.
You mean the desegregated? They hadn't
Yeah,
desegregated.
I mean, sorry,
Yeah.
desegregate the schools, integrated the schools
Right.
through busing. So, because they hadn't even tried that yet, they just assumed that Black people couldn't learn as well as white people.
Yeah, it's really interesting how this is funny to me, but it's just interesting how ignorant people have been throughout history. Those assumptions about, if you look at eugenics, and they characterize this as being feeble-minded and all these other kinds of things. And, one thing in life I've learned is that you can't judge a book by its cover. So you can't look at someone and say that they're unintelligent just because of what clothes they're wearing or whatever. You have no idea what's in their minds. But, and this ignorance is not something that has just gone away. I remember a few weeks back, there was this viral video of a young lady who was walking across the graduation stage, and she was about to shake hands with a Black man who was on stage, and her father bum rushed the stage and pushed the man away so that he could not shake his white daughter's hand. And to think in 2024, there are people who carry that type of prejudice, bias, preconceived notions, insecurities, or the word that I used initially, in ignorance. It's mind blowing. So it doesn't surprise me that they didn't look at the evidence, because they had to have your school records if you're transferring from one school to another. They had to have been able to see what type of classes you were taking, or they could have had a conversation with your mother and father to find out where things were. But they made these assumptions based on the fact that we are a Black child. And then the other thing that may have come into the equation, and perhaps you can talk about this if you like, is being a light-skinned African American. And I'm sure you probably had to deal with issues within the race and outside of the race because of that.
Well, I did. I did, because by me being part Native American, I have had really long hair and light skin, and I think colorism ran in almost everybody's family during that time between the 60s and the 70s, before we got really free in the 70s. So I think that when schools finally did get integrated, by the fact that I might have looked more like the white students, then when busing happened, of course I was ostracized by the Black students as well.
Right.
So I was miserable. I was bullied. I was miserable. I, couldn't find too many friends at all. And that's how I started writing poetry. And you know me as a poet. That's how I started writing poetry. One of my teachers said maybe if I took what I was thinking internally and put it to page, I would feel better. And so I used it as a therapy for myself. And when I was reading my poetry to my classmates in the English class, they were so excited about the poetry that they at first kind of forgot about the fact that I was the awkward Lori Ruth that they knew. And so poetry kind of gave me a way to be cool. So, as I got into high school, I was more assimilated into the classroom and had a lot of good friends.
Yeah. I kind of relate to what you're saying. And I think the same thing happened to me when I was at Kent, because it was really poetry that put me on the map. I don't know if you remember this or if you were even present, but there was Dick Gregory's appearance in the Kent State University ballroom. And before he spoke, I had an opportunity to do a poem, and I wrote a poem and shared it with one of the instructors at Oscar Ritchie Hall. It was Dr. Ann Adams Graves. She asked us to write a paper on the Black experience, the Black attitude of mind, I think is what she said. And so I wrote a poem, and as a matter of fact, I plan to perform that poem in the Borderline Festival. But
okay.
I did that poem before Dick Gregory spoke, and after I did that poem, I started getting respect from the Greeks who, I wasn't a Greek and I wasn't in those cliques, but I started getting respect from the Greeks, and I got respect from the Sisters on the Yard. So, I get it. Art can be transformative, and it definitely transformed my life. And I'm glad that it was able to transform yours. Art is therapy. Poetry is therapy because of the catharsis that's involved in expressing yourself and getting those thoughts and words out of your head and onto paper. So that's a great thing. I think it's relevant, too, because one of your hats has been an educator, and you did share that you are a tutor now. And because of that experience, it has made you even more effective as an educator. Just a few moments before we go into the next break, but I do want you to reflect a little bit more about being at Shaker Heights High School, because it was a unique situation for a lot of folks, and many of our colleagues who went to Kent came there, and they came out of the Shaker school system. What were your challenges there in that system?
Well, Shaker High School was great. I thought that there was such a real shift in thinking when the teachers started being inclusive and diverse, and they took us as students and made us understand that we could go anywhere in the world, having gone to Shaker, and we could fit in, and we would have some kind of cultural knowledge of where we were as far as our authenticity in the world. And the teachers that we had were very avant-garde. And I really appreciated the education I got at Shaker High School.
Yes.
It prepared me for college. It prepared me for the work world. I was in the vocational program, so it even got me a job early on. I happened to be an emancipated minor. My mother felt that my political views and my rebelliousness was too much for her, so she emancipated me at 16. And as an emancipated minor, I was able to go to school part-time and go work part-time.
Okay, hold up. That's quite something there. I want to explore that a little bit more when we return. This is Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM WOVU. My guest is educator, artist, actress, writer, entrepreneur, and mother, Lori Ingram. We'll be right back.
This is DJ Chris Dowles, programs and music director here at WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, a Burton Bell Carr community radio station. WOVU 95.9 FM sends a big thank you to the entire staff of the St. Luke's Foundation and President and CEO Timothy Tramble for awarding WOVU 95.9 FM $25,000 to purchase the WOVU 95.9 FM mobile vehicle. On behalf of our entire team, our Executive Director, Joy Johnson, and Executive Board, we said thank you, St. Luke's Foundation, for continuing addressing social determinants of health for our people in our neighborhoods and throughout Cuyahoga County. Thank you. This message is being brought to you by WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, a Burton Bell Carr community radio station.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson and the conversation with Lori Ingram, who, among other things, is an educator. And you were just sharing with us that you were emancipated at the age of 16. And I know a lot of young folks at the age of 16 think that they know everything and they're ready to be out the house and be grown. But most times, or many times, they're not really that capable. But in your case, it did happen. So tell me what it was like for you to be emancipated at such an early age.
Well, it was very difficult, I'll tell you that. But it was the challenge. I was up for the challenge because I had started distributing socialist newspapers. I was really into the politics of things back then. I wanted to make sure that all 18-year-olds did vote. We were able to vote then. And I wanted to make sure that they did vote. So I was out getting signatures for making sure that people were registered. And the jobs that I took were canvassing jobs. They had to do with the ecology and the environment. So I had several different causes that I stood behind. And that's how I ended up meeting Watabu, Atunta. And a good friend of the family was Kenya Adrian Robinson. So when they took me to New York and they took me to Newark and they took me to Harlem where I was reading poetry in Harlem. They took me to Manhattan and they really showed me what it was like to be an artist. There was a real artist that lives and works as an artist. And I just grabbed the ball and ran with it. I really did. So I ended up working at May Company downtown as the Lori Roberts girl in the cosmetic department. And eventually Kenya and Watabu said, okay, we need you to get some college education. You've been modeling enough. And they had me sign up at Kent State University. And that's how I began to learn how to really write poetry and how to perform on a different level.
Yes. So in essence, in light of your emancipation, they kind of took on surrogate parent roles.
Yes, I did. I took on, I was one of those kind of people that wanted, if I knew I needed help, I also knew that I had a good support system. Sometimes I wasn't staying at home. Sometimes I would stay with friends at their homes. And then when I went to Kent, of course, then I was staying in the dorms, so I knew I had a roof over my head, by the time I got to Kent State. So, I just felt the freedom that most 16, 17, 18-year-olds don't enjoy. and I was up for the task. It was difficult, but I was up for the task.
Well, what I find interesting was your political awareness, because you are acquainted with ideals such as socialism, and I'm sure you were probably exposed to the tenets of communism. I'm sure that you probably had some issues with capitalism because of your awareness of socialism. What was that born out of?
Well, it was really having read the works of Ayn Rand, The Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged, and seeing what her thoughts with capitalism were. They were phenomenal books, but I also saw that this was the mindset that is placed upon us as a society, and I wanted things to be more on an even score. So I started studying, and then also going to New York. I got a chance to meet Intisaki Shangi and see her first works for colored girls, When the Rainbow is Not Enough. And that was just a poetry chapbook at that time. It wasn't the entire play in Greenwich Village. And I got to meet people that were writing books like Das Energy, which, was all about living in communes. And, I really had a free, open mind to think that if we did things differently, we might find a different outcome, other than having this world being run by old, rich white men. And look at where we are now. We are faced with choosing between two old, rich white men.
Yes. Well, something else is interesting about what you just mentioned. And, we get so much information because of social media and so forth. I saw a post where somebody mentioned the Walton family and how much money they have. And you've got these folks who literally have billions and billions of dollars. So one family could have $200 billion. I guess the last estimate, and I could be wrong about this, so please don't quote me, but I think based on the video that I watched, you're 8 billion people on the planet. So if your family has $200 billion and there are 8 billion people on the planet, you could give away $8 billion and everybody on the planet would have $1 billion. And nobody would be poor. But it's not just one family that has all that. You have a very select few people who literally probably have $1 trillion. Nobody would have to go without if the folks who have so much would share just a little bit of what they have. But we have this thing called the American dream. And somehow people think that something magical is going to happen during their life. That whole Horatio Alger story that, all of a sudden you just come into this wealth. But the way things are going right now, and you mentioned it, we got a choice right now between two old white guys, both of whom are not poor, representing our interests. And it's, I hate to get political, but we've opened the political rabbit hole. But but I have just come to the conclusion that they give us a choice and we choose the lesser of two evils. But I don't see them as being unequal. I see them as being equal in terms of evil. That's just me. And I've said it more than once. I'll continue to say it. The jury's out on what's going to happen on November 5th, but I think it's going to be really interesting when we get to that finish line and see who's still in the race and who's going to emerge as the victor, because we really don't have a choice. In my estimation, we have the illusion of choice. There are several third-party candidates running. Robert Kennedy is one of them. Cornel West is one of them. I'm not sure if Marianne Williamson has abandoned her quest to become president, but she's still asking for donations. So, what those donations go towards, especially when, you really have a very slim to none chance of becoming elected. I don't know why you would spend money on those campaigns when they appear, at least from the outset, to be futile. But I don't know. Maybe you can give us some clarity on that.
Well, I know that the more that you have in your kitty, the more chances you have to actually win. And I have tried to actually go kind of behind the scenes with the Democratic Party and try to figure out what does that money really have to do with anything. And I haven't got an answer yet. So I don't know if it's how much ads you're able to buy or how much you're able to know that these people that are your donors are the people that is your constituency. I'm sure that has something to do with it, but it's something that I've tried to understand and don't understand. But I know that with what we're facing now, it is either do we want democracy, which is still hanging by a thread, or do we want to chuck that all in and have something else?
Yeah.
Which is dictatorship.
Right. Well,
so,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think democracy is kind of an illusion with that, so we think if we go red, then we get a dictator. If we go blue, then we get democracy. But, I'm just looking at the process, and I may have mentioned this on the air or maybe somewhere else. But if it was a true democracy, when the primaries came to Ohio, we would have been able to choose more than one candidate. I agree. When they had the primaries in Iowa, they chose between a number of folks. When they had the primary in South Carolina, I think they had a choice as Democrats of more than just Joe Biden. But then when it came to Ohio, we didn't have a choice. It was only one. How was that democratic? It to me, it's the decisions are being made for us. And now we're looking at the possibility that another decision will be made, but we won't have a vote in it because there won't be a primary involved to choose another candidate if Mr. Biden is not a part of the race or if he's not electable. There are a lot of conversations going on right now. And again, I opened up the political rabbit hole, but hey, we can talk about it. We should talk about it. I know that there are other conversations going on about, what's going to go on and conjecture that they may end up running. They've mentioned a few names. They've mentioned Michelle Obama as a potential candidate. They've mentioned, believe it or not, Oprah Winfrey. They have mentioned Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as a potential candidate. And when you think about it, it's not that far-fetched considering that the muscle man Arnold Schwarzenegger became the governor of California. And then you had the actor Ronald Reagan that became governor and president. So you never know. We'll just have to hang on and see what happens. But in the meantime, we will continue to talk about it. We're going to shift gears and talk about your artist life. You are a poet and also an actress and also a writer and entrepreneur. So we want to talk about those things as well, because we know we won't solve the problems of the world in this conversation today. You're listening to Open Door with Vince Robinson. My guest is educator, artist, actress, writer, entrepreneur, mother, and grandmother, Lori Ingram. We'll be right back on 95.9 FM, WOVU, Burton Belcar Community Radio.
Many people in our community dream of owning a home. Unfortunately, many also feel that dream is out of reach. However, family, KeyBank is committed to changing that. KeyBank partners with a variety of mortgage programs focused on meeting the needs of borrowers, including offering down payment assistance, affordable and government loans, and solutions for first-time home buyers. A Key Community Mortgage is also a great way to help reach the goal of home ownership. It allows you to take advantage of low down payment options, and qualifying is easier than you might think. It's one more way KeyBank is supporting neighbors and neighborhoods in the communities that they proudly call home. To learn more, visit your local KeyBank branch and speak to a licensed mortgage loan officer. KeyBank and home lending products offered by KeyBank are not FDIC insured or guaranteed. Equal housing lender, NMLS number 399797.
This message has been brought to you by KeyBank and WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, Burton Bell Carr, Community Radio.
Hi, this is Tammy Payton, the CEO and founder of Pillars to Success Incorporated. You are listening to 95.9 FM WOVU, Our Voices United, Burton Bell Carr, Community Radio.
Hi, this is Tara LaWanda Aaron. You're listening to WOVU 95.9 FM, Our Voices United, Burton Bell Carr, Community Radio.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. I'm speaking with Lori Ingram, and we've been down the political rabbit hole, but we're not going to solve the problems of the world today. We're just going to have to hang on and see who ends up on the ballot on November 5th. And we hope that it's not a dictator. We hope that democracy can continue if it is a democracy, or if the illusion can be enhanced somehow by the person who gets elected and we don't see our rights go out the window. And I'll say this before we move on. I was just reflecting on what we went through back in 2020 and 2021. And at that point, it really became clear to me that democracy was an illusion in our country, because people had to give up rights over their bodies, which is unforgivable. And they were given misinformation, and it was supported by the media, and it's still being perpetuated by the media. And it seems as though there's no letting up, because the narrative that came out then is still in progress now, even though we know all of the things that we know now that weren't really clear at the beginning of what happened during those years. But hey, again, we won't solve those problems, and we just have to do the best that we can to move forward with life and the realities of our political system. You have art in your makeup as an actress, as a writer, as a poet, and I am an art advocate. So, every opportunity that I get, I like to extol the virtues of art. It's played a pivotal role in your evolution. So talk to us about the actress side of Lori Ingram.
Okay, well, I first started acting, my first performance was when I was 4 years old. My grandmother on my mother's side used to take black actors that were doing summer stock and music carnival into her home, because it was hard for them to get hotel rooms back then because of segregation. So they didn't even want to go through having to figure out where they could be, that they would be safe and be well received. So the churches would open up some of the congregants' houses for them to stay in during the time that they were doing their summer stock. And so the grandmother that is on Family Matters was one of the people that stayed in my grandmother's house. And so she put me on the stage with a very tall man and a Great Dane dog. And they asked me several questions like, what is your name? I told them my name is Lori Ingram. What's your age? I'm 4 years old. And what do you know how to do? And I said, I know how to do a deep curtsy. And I did a deep curtsy in my little pretty frilly dress with my rumba pants and everything like that, my little shoes. And the crowd went wild. And when I got the applause from the crowd, I thought to myself, I want to hear this all the time. So that's how I started with the Loretta Lenoir. That's how I started being able to, wanting to be in front of an audience. Now, I was also, though, very shy as far as, when it came time for me to actually perform. So I've always had to work out my stage fright. I still have stage fright to this day, but I still perform even though I have stage fright. So, going to the Cleveland school system, as I said, we did a production of Julius Caesar, and I played Portia, the wife of Brutus, in Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. And then when I went to Shaker, I started writing plays and writing the poetry that goes into the plays. So I had a poem performed on WVIZ, the 13th Root Race, that came from a play that was done at Shaker High School. And then when I got to Kent, Ebony Woman, we did Ebony Woman, and I wrote some of that. And I wrote some of the plays wrote parts of plays with Halim Eldab, and really just tried to hone in on writing more than performing. And then when I came back to Cleveland from having lived with, I had gotten married, and my husband passed away when my son was 2 months old. And so I didn't do anything in the arts at all. I went back to selling cosmetics in department stores. But when I got a job in Cleveland, Ohio, I got a job at the Playhouse Square Center. And from there, I met a lot of actors and a lot of playwrights, and began to write more, and started working as an actress at Paramount House. So there are different parts of me as far as being an actress or being a writer. You have to look at it through different points of view, but the whole thing to me is seeing an idea, showing the truth of what actually happens in real life, or the fantasy of what could happen, and portraying that as a character in essence on stage or in film. I've done 2 horror films that had some pretty good acclaim. One is called Hell Week, the Grindhouse edition, and the other one is called Voodoo Rising, where I play the voodoo lady. And that was a lot of fun, working on those horror films. So wherever I can find a part that seems to fit me, I go for it and try to get the role and, see what happens.
You mentioned preferring to write rather than act. Was there a reason that you made that pivot?
Well, for one, if you're writing, you're looking at it from the point of view as the writer. Of course, you're creating what someone else is going to perform. So you have to look at the whole thing, the character arc, where you are, where's the setting, all of that is encompassed in your writing. And you don't know where you're going to end up when you get started with writing a play or writing a piece. You don't know where you're going to end up. You have an idea that what you want the play to be about, but you have to also have these characters speak. And so you have to figure out what kind of way are they going to speak? What are they going to say? And how does their dialogue run with each other? And that's really challenging, and it's a lot of fun. As a performer, though, you have to try to look at what it is that you think the playwright is trying to say, and put yourself not as yourself, but as the character, and make that character come alive. So it's two different ways of looking at things. Let's put it that way.
Yes. Now that you mentioned embodying what the character stands for and so forth and so on, I'm curious if you have heard anything about perhaps the negative side of embodying other people and bringing their state of mind into your consciousness. And I think about that when I think about you having done the horror movies, because I can't watch horror movies. I'm sorry. Just somebody messing with my head like that just doesn't sit well with me. But I've heard it said that some actors pay a price because they've played so many different roles, and in playing those roles, they become those characters. In real life, sometimes people see an actor and they will relate to them as the character and not the person, and they don't say, hey, I'm not the guy on the soap opera, so don't slap me. That was just the guy that I was playing.
Well, I think you do become that person for a while. And I remember when I did Hell Week, I scared myself. I was jumping every time one of my kids came into the kitchen, because I literally scared my own self when I got home. So it is one of those kind of things where you do begin to not know where the character ends and you begin.
Yes.
So there's that danger as an actress, as an actor, that you can fall into your character pretty deeply.
Yes. And another thing about acting that I've discovered after having done a couple of roles myself is that it is a lot of work. I mean, whether it's a play or whether it's a movie, with the play, you literally memorize the entire script because you have to know your lines and you have to know those who are acting with you. You have to know their lines so that you know when to come in and when to go out. But, on a movie set, you're consumed with the scene, but not the entire script at one time. So, but, acting is hard work. I don't think they get enough credit for what they do. And in most cases, I mean, you look at folks like Taraji P. Henson, they don't get paid enough for what they do either. And to think, a play might run for a week or 2 weeks, or it might just be a weekend, but you will literally spend months before you step on stage and wear that costume and speak those lines like it's you. It's hard work. I'll just say that. interesting, and I'm glad that you've been able to enjoy that success. We will shift gears and talk about Lori Ruth Ingram, the mother. We'll do that when we return. This is Open Door with Vince Robinson on 95.9 FM, WOVU, Burton Belcar Community Radio. Our voices united. We'll be right back.
This is DJ Chris Styles, Programs and Music Director here at WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, a Burton Belcar community radio station. WOVU 95.9 FM sends a big thank you to the entire staff of the St. Luke's Foundation and President and CEO Timothy Tramble for awarding WOVU 95.9 FM $25,000 to purchase the WOVU 95.9 FM mobile vehicle. On behalf of our entire team, our Executive Director, Joy Johnson, and Executive Board, we said thank you, St. Luke's Foundation, for continuing addressing social determinants of health for our people in our neighborhoods and throughout Cuyahoga County. Thank you. This message is being brought to you by WOVU 95.9 FM. Our Voices United, a Burton Belcar community radio station.
Hi, this is Gerard Amir Shakir, and you're listening to 95.9 FM. Our Voices Unite.
Welcome back to Open Door with Vince Robinson. That's fascinating conversation with Lori Ingram, who is an educator. We've talked about her being a poet and an actress and a writer. And in addition to all of those other roles, she is not only a mother, but she's also a grandmother. I've had an occasion to meet her daughter, who was a very gifted and talented person as well. Talk to us about becoming a mommy.
Well, for me, becoming a mom, my kids saved my life. They really did. You know, after my husband passed away, my son was 2 months old when he passed away, and I had to become a single parent, and I didn't expect to be a single parent. So everything was, I don't know, my whole life shifted. And I was still working in department stores as management, and I was working 12-hour days, and I had to be away from my children, my child so much. And I took him with me everywhere I went as a buyer. I took him to New York. I took him with him to California, and we stayed there for almost 6 months. And you know, I had him everywhere I went, but I realized that he really, you know, only saw me when it was time for me to take him to McDonald's or time for me to take him to the park or something like that. We really hadn't bonded as well as I would have liked us to have done. And then I was very fortunate to have my sister, who is knew everything about how to raise a child. And she taught me so much about, you know, potty training and what to do and how to do it. And I had to, you know, follow suit and try to get the tools of the trade, let's put it that way, as far as being a mom is concerned. And then I had my daughter, and I was not with her father, but she came at a time when I really needed to focus on just living life to its fullest. And it really helped me to be able to have her in my life. And my son needed her as well. Just like, you know, my son didn't even want me to change her diaper or get her dressed. He wanted to do all of that himself. He wanted to take care of his little sister. And it was a time where I could have a real family, considering the fact that I was an emancipated minor, who didn't have a lot of family ties before that. So I had all kind of ways to know what not to do. And then I had my sister able to show me what things to do. And I felt really accomplished as a mom. And I really tried to instill in my kids that they need to get an education, that they need to be free with their artistic and creative minds. My daughter went to the Cleveland School of Arts. She graduated from there. And, you know, I had to make sure that they felt like they were seen and that they were appreciated. And I think in that sense, I did a good job. And now my son has 4 children and my daughter has 1 child. And she just had her son is 15 months old. And now I'm starting with this new little boy. And, you know, it's easier for you to have your daughter's children are always with you. Your son's children, they are with their mothers and that maternal grandmother more so. They know me, they love me, but I'm not with them all the time. But I am with my daughter's son all the time. And he just makes my heart leap. He's such a beautiful baby. And, you know, I like teaching him things and like to see how eager he is to learn. So, you know, being a parent, it really is a blessing.
Yes, parenthood is definitely a blessing, and being a grandparent is a blessing as well. I take it there were certain things that you learned in raising your son and your daughter that you can benefit from to share with your daughter in raising her son.
Well, one thing is my daughter is a single parent as well. And the one thing is that, you know, people say you have to have both parents, but, you know, you do what you have to do. You take care of your child as a mom. You take care of your child as much as best you can, and you instill in the values that you would like to instill in them. And I do think that it is possible for a single mother to raise their children and have their children come out all right. So I you know, some people say they don't think it's possible, but I do. I think it's very possible for a mom. Okay, for a mom to be able to take care of their children in the right way as a single parent.
Yes. Well, society has proven that a single mother is capable, but, you know, the core of our existence is the family. And it's just so important for that child growing up to be able to see the behavior of a mother and a father. Again, it's not always possible, but whenever possible, you know, we should be looking at that option. You know, it's funny, Lori, I've been seeing a lot of videos, Kevin Samuels and other types that talk about the same kinds of things. And one of the things that always comes up is, you know, single mothers and high value men and so forth. It's really it's a jungle out there when it comes to relationships, because our values have become so twisted, you know, and we don't always look at the depth of a person. We just look at what's on the outside and we reach conclusions about them without really knowing them. And I want to point the finger of blame at both, because people get together without really considering the consequences of their actions. And so, you know, a woman might mate with someone who's not really suited to them, and they know it before they lay down with them. And then, you know, things happen and then they go their separate ways, and that child has to deal with the consequences of the choices that were made. But I know this for a surety. Man is for woman and woman is for man. And I know there are other conversations about other combinations. but nature,
well, I mean,
nature.
That could be fluid. Maybe there's a little fluidity there. That's you can have two males raise a child that has things going on for it. You can have two women raise children. Then they can have a great morals and values. I think it's just that we need to stop being in denial when we get together in relationships that, something could come from this that's more than what we bargained for.
That's true. But again, the original design... The original design was a man and a woman. They come together, they make a child, they raise a child or children or whatever, and they do the best they can to pass along that process to those that they bring into the world and, rinse, lather, repeat. But we live in a different world these days. And again, we're not going to solve the problems of the world in this conversation, but it's just it's disheartening to see the way we treat each other. It's like, the women and the men are in a contest to see who has it worse. And we're both in the same boat and the boat is sinking, and when we lock arms and figure something out, perhaps we can create the change that we need to see. But as long as we're at each other's throats and finger pointing and, that whole I don't need a man stuff and, men get into a place where they don't need a woman, well, I don't want to get off on that tangent, but I just think it's a beautiful thing when a man and a woman can come together, create a family and, do what needs to be done. It's part of our culture. And we've had conversations about this. I think one of the biggest issues that we have as a community in a larger country is that we don't have enough of our cultural sense to do the things that will enable us to be successful. That's a real issue. One thing that's missing from our education process is rites of passage. And through rites of passage, young boys learn what their roles are. Young girls learn what their roles and responsibilities are. And when everybody lives within the realm of their roles and responsibilities and their purpose, then everybody's needs are met. But, we go through this so-called education process and the whole objective is to get a job. And so many times the job has nothing to do with your purpose. Sometimes people choose jobs because of the salary that they could get. And then they get that salary and they have all the responsibilities that go along with that salary, and nothing has anything to do with their purpose, and they end up living miserable lives, servicing debt. That's that's the American way. But, again, rites of passage would be very helpful in that sense. And cultural acumen would be that too, along with your responsibilities and roles. There are just basic things like respecting your elders. You're not going to cuss the man down the street out. He's 70, 80 something years old. You're not going to cuss him out. It could be one of your relatives. Same thing, just something as basic as respect. It needs to be taught and it needs to be honored. And I think we'll get along a lot farther when we learn those very basic tenets of culture, of family, even education. Another tangent that we could go down because we've talked about education, but the education system, as you pointed out, there are a lot of failures along the way. I mean, with your skill set and your knowledge, when you were in fifth grade, you may have been able to graduate when you were 16, 17 years old. If you've gotten that head start and emancipated at 16, you're ready for the world. but they set you back. That's kind of life. But fascinating conversation, Lori. I've learned a lot about you in the past 57 minutes. I see that you are a poet, and I'm hopeful to hear some of your poetry. I remember back in the day, it was almost 4 decades ago. I don't want to date us, but 4 decades ago, I experienced your poetry, and hopefully within the next few weeks, I'll get another opportunity to do that. Thank you for joining me on Open Door today.
Thank you so much. It was an honor to be on your show.
All right. And to those of you who are listening, as always, know yourself, love yourself, be yourself. Make today your absolute best day. Peace.